long title, but for you to remember, just remember those highlighted words: assessments, measuring students, 21st century skills. So this is somehow related to what Rizal shared a while ago in terms of outcome-based assessment. So the objectives of this presentation first is to define assessment in the academe and its current trends in the K-12 program here in the Philippines. And then explain the relationship of assessment in learning. Explain the importance of integrating assessments as a diagnostic continuum in student learning, and to recommend strategies on how teachers can make appropriate assessments in the classroom. So during the convention, this was shared by Dr. Miguel Rabatan. So he was the presenter during the conference. He was a writer, a director, a producer, and a teacher. He is an associate professor at the Communication Arts of the Communication Arts Department of the De La Salle University, Manila, and he was a Fulbright scholar in Columbia and Stanford for his postgraduate degrees. So let's start. What is assessment? So an assessment is an ongoing process of identifying, gathering, and interpreting evidence about teaching and student learning. So I want everyone to take note of the word ongoing. It's ongoing, meaning assessment during learning and during the teaching process, it is continuous. It does not stop. So first we identify, then we gather, interpret, and then interpret evidence. So what evidence do we get? So in the K-12 program of DepEd, as mentioned a while ago, there is a shift to outcomes-based assessment. So in the K-12 program, what is being assessed are the standards and the 21st century skills. So when we say outcomes-based, it's based on students demonstrating understanding or mastery of the knowledge and skills they are expected to learn as they progress through their education. So the Department of Education identified what are the skills that needed to be assessed. So first, there's the information, media, and technology skills. So how well is the student able to utilize the technology today? And then learning and innovation skills. Does the student know how to research? Does he or she has critical thinking skills? Another one is communication skills. How well is the student able to express him or herself to others? And then life and career skills is also one of the skills that are being assessed. So these skills are important for higher education, employment, entrepreneurship, and middle-level skills development. So these are the things which the Department of Education identified that needs to be assessed all throughout the curriculum. So the purpose of assessment is to first provide information about student achievement, and then set the direction for teaching and learning, and to improve. So there are two types of assessment. We have the formative assessment and the summative assessment. Now, what are the differences between the two? So first, formative assessment happens during the learning process. So what it does is to monitor student learning. Examples of assessments: class observations, homework, reflections. place after the learning has taken place, after the learning process. So its purpose is to evaluate student learning. Examples are exams and performance tasks. So if we are going to compare it, if we're going to look at it, exams refers to the traditional assessment, and then performance tasks, yung authentic assessments, which Lizelle explained a while ago. So what's the relationship between assessment and learning? So there are three ways by which we can look at assessment. Assessment as learning, assessment for learning, and assessment of learning. When we regard assessment as learning and assessment for learning, we are referring to formative assessments. But when we regard assessment of learning, we are referring to summative assessment. So let's try to expand more on these three bullets. So first, assessment as learning. It gives students the opportunity to advance their own learning through personal reflection and metacognitive awareness. So when we say metacognitive awareness, this is when students become aware of how they learn. So when we use assessment as learning, it's very important that the student is able to understand how he or she is able to learn. So assessment as learning, we use formative assessment. So we can use reflections so that we can know what did the student learn. So on the part of the teacher, when the student writes a reflection, then the teacher gets to read that reflection. The teacher is able to think about how well will he or she be able to improve his or her teaching. So in that way, the student will learn more, the teacher will improve his or her teaching. So that's one importance, one benefit of assessment, of using assessment as learning. So meaning, it's very important that students are able to reflect on what they learn. They are able to understand what is it for. So implications to teachers. So what can the teachers do when they regard assessment as learning? First, help the students develop skills on how to assess themselves through modeling and teaching. So teachers must be able to model how to assess themselves, then guide students in setting their own goals. So if the student does not know what is his or her goal, then the student wouldn't know what does he or she need to learn. So medyo sabog yung kanyang thinking about what to learn. So there is the importance of guiding the students, and then provide regular and challenging opportunities to build self-confidence. So it's very important also that the level of assessment progresses over time. So for example, if at the first time the student is able to manage the assessment easily, then at the end, the student is having more difficulty, then it means that perhaps the teacher needs to teach more comprehensively, and so the student is able to know that he needs to strive more. So in this way, can build self-confidence because he is able to gauge his or her learnings. And then monitor students' learning and provide descriptive feedback. So this can be done through the help of reflections. And then create supportive environment for students. So the teachers always need to support the students. Assessments are not made to make the lives of the students hard. So actually, assessment needs to motivate the students to learn more. So that's the purpose of assessment as learning. So that's for personal reflection and metacognitive awareness. Next is assessment for learning. So a while ago we discussed assessment as learning. Now what's the importance of assessment for learning? So it happens during the learning process, often more than once. Students understand exactly what they are to learn, what is expected of them, and are given feedback and advice on how to improve their work. So this is the process itself that happens now for learning. So implications to the teacher. So first, make assessments that will help students achieve their set goals. So we do not just make any kinds of assessment. So the assessment is directed toward your goal. What do you want your student to learn? So that is how you are going to make an assessment. And then identify the learning needs of students to serve as guide on the kind of assessment to be made. And then select and adapt materials and resources to make it appropriate to students. So like for us, our students are deaf. So our resources, our words should be easy to understand. It must be simple. So as short as it can be, it would be better. And then adapt materials whereby they can relate. Then create differentiated teaching strategies and learning opportunities. So different students have different capabilities. So we need to create differentiated teaching strategies. And then provide immediate feedback and direction to students. So feedback would be helpful only if the feedback is made immediate. So if you give feedback at the end of the term, then it would be useless because the student will not be given the chance to know where to improve more during the time of the learning process. So feedback must be immediate, not at the end of the term. And then enhance students' motivation and commitment to learning. So how can we do this? We can create a supportive environment in the classroom. Right? Then, assessment of learning. So a while ago, assessment as learning and assessment for learning use formative assessments. Now, assessment of learning use summative assessment. So it provides evidence of achievement to parents, students, and other concerned groups, mostly done at the end of a task or lesson. So it measures how well students learn. So example of summative assessments a while ago, exams, chapter tests, performance tasks. So in the traditional assessment, this refer to the grade. So what we see at the report card. So that will give us a measure of how well the students learn. So what are the implications to teachers? So first, be fair and accurate in assessing student learning. Base it on evidence obtained from several sources. Then provide clear descriptions of what the students need to learn. Give students opportunities to demonstrate their competencies and skills. So that's why it's important that we do not just end with knowledge-based. So it's important that we have the application part whenever we teach because that will give us an insight of how well our students really learned. And then provide description of the assessment process in order to be fair and accurate to all students. So we have already finished assessment as learning, assessment for learning, and assessment of learning. So this is an ongoing assessment as explained a while ago in the title, in the definition also of assessment as ongoing. So it must be a diagnostic continuum. So, as a diagnostic continuum, so feedback and goal setting takes place during the learning process. So it does not just happen at the beginning or at the end. So ongoing, because we monitor student learning. And then, so we start with pre-assessment or finding out. And then followed by formative assessment, as explained a while ago, keeping track and checking up on how the students learn, on what the students learn, if there are certain areas that need to be repeated, how they can improve their teaching. And then summative assessment. So that's making sure that students already learn something. So as Peregrino, Chudowski, and Glazer said on their research last 2001, an assessment plan must come first, not last in the educational process. So even when we make assessments, so we just not give assessment for the sake of having the student answer something. So we plan it, we make sure that it is directed toward our learning goals. So it's not as easy as we think assessment is. So a better way to assess student learning is through the use of photo album approach. Ano yun? So di ba when we look at photo albums, we look at different pictures. So let's say for example, sa FB, diba merong mga different albums doon with titles. And then we're going to click on the title. So we know that we are looking, for example, the title of the album is Learning Session. So we know that the pictures that we are going to look at are all about learning session. So it will give us different pictures on that, but we know that what is being described in the picture is all about learning session. So in assessment naman, we know that what we are doing is assessment, and we are looking at different evidences. So for example, exams, performance tasks, reflection journal. So it's a mixture of different evidences whereby we can base our assessment for student learning. So that is photo album approach. So we're not just looking at one source in order to give an assessment to student, because that will be unfair, that will be biased, so to speak. So there is our take-home reminders given by Dr. Rapatan during the conference. First, be skilled in unpacking the standards in order to identify the skills that need to be mastered. So dapat you know what the standards are, and you must be skilled on how you can unpack that. And then use appropriate research-based models of learning when unpacking and designing relevant assessments and interpreting results. Be systematic in preparing various forms of assessment. As explained a while ago, we just not give assessment for the sake of having the student answer something. So formative and summative assessments need to be integrated, aligned with targeted mastery skills, and planned in advance. And then, student learning needs to be progressive. Hence, make sure that assessments given to students progress in level of difficulty. So remember, if the level of difficulty is the same all throughout the term, we cannot say that student learning is also progressing. So our goal is for the student to learn more and to progress his or her knowledge. And then the ultimate goal of assessments is to obtain data or information that will enable the students to direct his or her own learning. So for example, the teacher gave me a low assessment, negative feedback. Then the student will be able to know that he or she needs to improve more, he or she needs to study more, So he is being directed to what he or she needs to learn. And then be clear and direct in communicating learning goals and feedback to students to ensure future success. That's why at the beginning, di ba, when we give syllabus, when syllabus are given, there are already the learning objectives, there's the learning outcomes, so that the students will know where he will direct himself in terms of learning. So personal insights on the topic. So assessment needs to be appropriate for the students. It must be well planned and prepared. The main focus of assessment is student learning, not to make the lives of the students hard. So it must motivate them to want to learn more. Assessment and learning goals need to be integrated to have a reliable and valid measure of student learning. And then assessment helps the teachers improve their teaching method. So how is that so? So the teachers will be able to identify strengths and weaknesses of students based on the lesson being taught. Kasi nakikita niya based on the assessment, based on the evaluation, and then identification of teaching strategies that are effective in their students. So, to sum it all, assessment benefits both the teachers and the student. That's all. Thank you. What you're referring to is formative assessments. Formative assessments are low-stake assessments. Are you aware? Low-stake. So, low-stake. Low-stake. So, it does not... Okay, wait. So, when we use those, it's not usually graded. Kasi the main goal of formative assessment is to monitor student learning. So, when we grade it agad, we're not grading the achievement already of the student in terms of the course. So, let's remember that the student is still in the process of learning. So, he or she wasn't able to learn what he or she needs to learn fully. So, formative assessments are used for the student to improve what needs to be learned and for the teacher to improve his or her teaching. So, it's not meant to be graded, but it's meant to improve the student and the teacher. So, my suggestion is do not grade formative assessments because that's not the real measure of the student's. What we can grade are the summative assessments, which is the one being given at the end of the so the chapter tests, the performance tasks, that's what we grade because that's what will measure student achievement.